In the late 80s and early 90s, anthropomorphic action-adventure shows were where it was at. Regardless of the gimmick, all had a strong mix between lighthearted humour and a strong emphasis on action and adventure. And joining those shows in September of 1991 was Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars, which was based on the cult comic of the same name, and produced by its comics publisher, Continuity Comics, in collaboration with Sumbo Productions, Marvel Productions, ABRAMS and GENTILE Entertainment. The show was distributed by Hasbro's subsidiary, Cluster Television. Bucky O'Hare was the brainchild of comic book writer and editor, Larry Hama, who had done a lot of work for Marvel Comics over the years, including G.I. Joe and The Punisher. The series introduces us to the Aniverse, a universe populated by planets, each home to an anthropomorphic version of animals native to our world. Here we meet Bucky, a green-furred rabbit from the planet Warren, who fights for the United Animals Federation against the evil Toad Empire, which is hell-bent on conquering the galaxy. Bucky commands the Righteous Indignation, a military spaceship whose crew includes his first mate, a cat named Jenny, a one-eyed android named Blinky, gunner Deadeye Duck, and chief engineer Bruce. We are also introduced to Willie DeWitt.
No, seriously, that's his real name.
A child prodigy from our world who has been building in his room a device he calls a photon accelerator. At the same time, overwhelmed by Toad forces, Bucky is forced to use his own experimental photon accelerator.
What a coincidence.
Causing a literal doorway to open between the two universes, pulling Willie into the Aniverse and throwing Bruce into an unknown dimension. The crew, at first distrustful of Willie, are surprised and impressed by his understanding of their technology, and have no choice but to accept his aid in fixing their damaged ship's systems in order to repel the Toads and make their way to the United Animals Federation to warn them of the coming Toad menace. Willie,
seriously,
now able to open a doorway between worlds at will, agrees to join the crew as their engineer to help them continue their fight against the Toads and try to rescue Bruce from wherever he has been transported. Main theme and intro.
In another dimension, another time and space, a parallel universe is falling on its face. When out of the chaos, who else could it be but the animal adventurers from SPACE? Bucky! Captain Bucky O'Hare! Mutants and aliens and toads beware! You're looking for adventure? Well, this is it! With Jenny, Deadeye, Blinky, and Willie DeWitt, I said Bucky! Captain Bucky O'Hare!
And now an update on Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars!
In the battle of the Aniverse, you don't know what's next. You only know amphibians are made it complex. When you check out your scanner and the evil that it bodes, there's only one course of action.
Let's cook us some toads!
Bucky! Captain Bucky O'Hare! He goes when no ordinary rabbit would dare. If your righteous indignation has suffered a hit, and your photon accelerator's broken a bit, and you're losing your mind, and you're having a fit, get the funky fresh rabbit who can take care of it. Bucky! Captain Bucky O'Hare! You say Bucky! I said Bucky! Bucky O'Hare! Let's croak us some toads!
I love this song.
Easily one of the most memorable intros of the 90s, its featured action is well animated and dynamic, and through lyrics quickly introduces the audiences to the main cast and setup, as well as the villains of the show.
It's just so catchy.
Story and characters. Hama made a name for himself writing for Marvel Comics' licensed series G.I. Joe, which was based on the Hasbro line of military action figures. After originally pitching the idea of a Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. spin-off series, Fury Force, about the adventures of a special mission force.
But Hammer's creative input into G.I. Joe is an entirely different episode.
While working at Neil Adams' Continuity Associates, Hammer developed Bucky O'Hare, which he first created in 1978. Neil Adams is one of the most influential artists of all time, in particular when it comes to Batman. He helped Hammer develop the idea of Bucky, which had been kicking around in Hammer's head for several years, until 1984 when Continuity placed him in an anthology title, Echo of Future Past. There his visual appearance was created by artist Michael Golden, who had worked previously on Batman and illustrated his initial 6-part story starting in the first issue. Most of the ideas from the comic book were used for the cartoon, with 4 major differences. Bruce is transported into another dimension instead of killed, Willie can travel freely between Earth and the Aniverse, Deadeye talks like a pirate instead of a Scotsman, and the omnipotent mouse is nowhere to be seen. The cartoon explored more of the Aniverse and followed a loose unifying arc, with Bucky's home planet of Warren being captured by the Toads in the season premiere. Christy Marks wrote 6 of the episodes of the 13-episode run. Her previous work included Reboot, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, Gem and the Holograms, and the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Other writers of the show of note include comic writing legend Doug Moench, who is the creator of several iconic comic characters, including Batman characters Harvey Bullock, Black Mask, and Bane. But his greatest contribution to comics came in the form of Marvel's Moon Knight.
I love Moon Knight.
Another contributor was Richard Merwin, who has worked on shows including Widget the World Watcher, Dink the Little Dinosaur, Mummies Alive, and the excellent Phantom 2040. Veteran television writer George Arthur Bloom, who wrote the pilots for the original Transformers and My Little Pony series, wrote 2 episodes. Marty Pascoe wrote 1 episode. He would go on to be a regular writer on Batman the Animated Series and contribute to the screenplay for Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Neil Adams also co-wrote the series final, which is pretty cool. Characters of note, as to be expected, included Bucky, Willie DeWitt.
That is the sort of name that parents give to a child that they do not love.
Willie works as the audience's point of view character. Jenny is the girl of the group, who possibly possesses magical powers and shockingly also has the power of telepathy. She also has an odd flirtatious relationship with Willie. It's very strange. The Air Toad Marshal is often amusing as a glory-obsessed incompetent. In odd comparison, Cyborg Commander, Toadborg, and main villain Complex are genuinely intimidating villains, both in their appearances and in how regularly they actually succeed with their plans. The show's cast quickly grows as the United Animals Federation expands its fleet and new characters join both sides. Characters of note include Al Negator, who is from a race known as the Sleazozoids,
Guess which side he's on.
and a personal favourite, Commander Dogstar, and his crew on the Indefatigable. These guys are awesome. Check it out, one of the crew is a giant bee that shoots lasers from his butt. That's just amazing. However, as impressive as that is, none of these compare to what is easily television's greatest character, Dead-Eye Duck. A 4-armed duck who talks like a pirate because he is actually from a race of 4-armed duck pirates. Design and style. The series was animated by Acom, whose previous work includes cult classics The Tick and Earthworm Jim, the beloved 90s X-Men, and the masterpiece of television that is G.I. Joe Extreme.
So extreme!
Working as supervising director on all the series episodes was Karen Peterson, whose career spans 3 decades, covering multiple roles in animation, with shows of note that include cult classic Gummy Bears, Goof Troop, Muppet Babies, God, the Devil and Bob, X-Men Evolution, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, RoboCop Alpha Commando, the 90s Incredible Hulk, Bonkers, Conan the Adventurer, Gargoyles, and Batman the Animated Series.
You know, bonkers aside, that's quite an impressive list.
The show has some fantastic world and character designs, all owing to the original work of artist Michael Golden, whose influence can be plainly seen in the show's look. Always colourful and delighting in the weird, the Toads in particular are clearly based on Nazi stormtroopers, and Toadborg's design and voice work frankly makes Darth Vader look like a pussy. Action. Though very much dated in certain aspects, one thing Bucky O'Hare never lacks in is action. Regular space battles feature between the righteous indignation and overwhelming amounts of Toad spacecraft, and all of the characters' unique physical traits are made good use of in situations of peril, as well as the show's regular attempts at physical comedy. Laser blasts are also a regular feature of the show. Characters often fire their guns almost seemingly for the sake of it, at a rate that the blaster sound is almost as prominent as the show's actual musical score. Which brings us to soundtrack. The series' main theme and soundtrack was composed by Doug Katsaros, who had previously collaborated with Neil Adams on a separate project. His work includes G.I. Joe, Sergeant Savage and his Screaming Eagles, Old Soldiers Never Die, and the entire soundtrack of 90s cult classic The Tick animated series. And as with that show, Katsaros again brings a very memorable score to Bucky O'Hare, with a regular inclusion of elements from the already enthusiastically talked about main intro.
I mean, it's just so good!
The show includes some very memorable music, in particular when it comes to its action sequences. There are also signature themes for certain characters and locations that are used regularly throughout the series. Unfortunately, the various songs are used in their original recorded forms. No variation occurs, and in some cases it's very noticeable that the music has been chopped together in order to better fit in with the context of what's happening on screen. Voice cast. Jason Mikas voices Bucky O'Hare. It's an interesting choice as he brings a quieter personality to the character, especially when in comparison to the rest of the cast. Industry legend Scott McNeil brings his talent to voicing Deadeye Duck, along with fellow Beast Wars cast members Richard Newman and Gary Chalk. Chalk voicing Commander Dogstar and Alligator, and Newman bringing his distinctive voice to Toadborg. All three did additional voices on the show. Complex was voiced by Long John Baldry. That is the coolest name. He has an extensive career in voice work. A personal favourite was as the Great Heap in the Star Wars Droids TV movie. Jay Brazier brings some wonderful pomposity to the Toad Air Marshal. Another with a long-spanning career in TV and film, he would play the news vendor Bernard in 2009's Watchmen. The Clancy Brown effect. Whenever I watch any cartoon, the first thing I check is does it feature Clancy Brown. Clancy Brown is one of the all-time greats of cinema and television, most famous for his roles as the Kurgan in Highlander and Lex Luthor in the Bruce Timm era of DC. Still to this day, the best Lex Luthor. The man has done a lot of voice work over the years, to the point where his presence has almost been a constant in shows I watched growing up. As a result, any show not featuring him will never, in my eyes, be truly great.
He's not in Bucky O'Hare.
How meta is it? The show makes a not so subtle attempt to convey the dangers of pollution and other threats to the environment. It's not quite Captain Planet level obvious, but social commentary on the dangers of propaganda and couch potato culture can plainly be seen in the series' running joke of Toad TV, where in that case it is literally rotting viewers' brains. Toy giant Hasbro, whose animation wing distributed Bucky O'Hare, also made the toys tied into the show. Because always remember kids, 80s and 90s cartoons almost exclusively existed to sell toys. Except Bonkers.
Bonkers was garbage.
The toys were extremely faithful to their designs to the show's characters, as well as some of the vehicles featured. Absent from the release was the Righteous Indignation and co-pilot Jenny. A Bucky O'Hare game was released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1992. The gameplay and level design very closely resembled that of Capcom's Mega Man series. An arcade game by Konami was also released which allowed players to control Bucky, Jenny, Deadeye or Blinky in a format similar to the arcade games based on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, X-Men and The Simpsons.
All of which are classics.
Though there was a conclusion to the series' main arc, there wasn't a definitive ending to the Toad Wars. It was likely that to perhaps satisfy fans when a second season was not released, the plot of the arcade game allowed players to achieve a final victory over the Toads by releasing an energy called the Interplanetary Life Force, contained within Complex. This last hurrah to the series also featured the original voice cast. It's a shame that the second season was not greenlit, as there was plenty of room for this series to grow, with a surprisingly coherent serial-based narrative that included some genuine adult themes. Of note, the Toad slave work camps that draw obvious comparisons to certain historical events. It's a dark thing to feature in a show that stars a green talking rabbit. For Megaminds, it's admittedly dated but always creative and most importantly still a lot of fun. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode then please check out some of my other content and feel free to like and subscribe. Until next time.